All right, let's jump right in. Every single time you log into a website, open a file, or even just use an ATM, there's this invisible web of rules deciding what you can and can't do. These are called logical access controls, and they're kind of the secret gatekeepers of our digital world. So today, we're going to pull back that curtain and see exactly how they work.
But we're going to start in a place you would probably never expect. Not in some high-tech server room or behind a complicated firewall, but with one of the most boring everyday devices in any office.
So let me ask you a question. What do you think is the biggest security risk where you work? Is it the main server, the Wi-Fi router, maybe an employee's laptop? Well, the answer is probably something you walk past a dozen times a day without giving it a second thought.
Yep, the printer. We just see it as this clunky machine that spits out paper, right? But from a security point of view, it's a full-fledged computer. It's got its own memory and its own connection to the network. And if that connection isn't locked down properly, it becomes this perfect, unguarded backdoor into everything else.
And look, this isn't just some theory. It is shockingly easy to prove this is real. There are these specialized search engines out there, like Shodan, that just scan the internet for connected devices. A quick search can turn up thousands, literally thousands of printers just sitting out there, totally unsecured and open to anyone in the world.
And the kind of information you can pull from these things is staggering. You can get its exact physical location, its serial number, and this is the scary part. You can access its recent print and scan history. I mean, just think about that for a second. What if an IT admin printed out a list of temporary passwords? That sensitive file could be sitting right there in the printer's memory, completely open for the taking.
So how do we prevent this kind of thing? How do we control all these digital doors? Well, this brings us to the absolute core concept of our explainer today.
This is where logical access controls come into play. Really, they're just the rules, written in code and logic, that manage who gets to access what. It's the digital version of a lock and a key. It's as simple as that.
Thinking about it in physical terms really helps make sense of it. A physical key for a door? That's just like a password for a digital file. A security guard checking your ID at a gate? That's the same as a system verifying your login. We're just taking these real-world security ideas and applying them to technology.
Okay, so if these are the digital locks, then the next question is pretty obvious, right? Who gets the keys? How do companies decide who gets to open which doors? Well, it turns out there's a very formal process for doing just that.
It's called identity and access provisioning. It sounds complicated, but it's really just the step-by-step process of creating a digital identity for someone or even something, and then being super careful about what it's allowed to access.
And this whole process really breaks down into 3 logical steps. First, you have to define the entity. That's the who or the what that needs access. Could be a person, a whole department, even another computer. Next, you establish its unique identity. A username, an employee ID, something that proves it is what it claims to be. And finally, you assign attributes. This is the really crucial part where you decide what specific files, systems, or printers this identity is allowed to touch.
The airport is a perfect real-world example of this. Think about it. An airline agent's ID badge will get them into the booking system, but it's not going to open the main terminal doors. A security guard's badge, on the other hand, can open those doors, but there's no way it's going to let them log into the airline's check-in computer. Different roles, different keys.
And this is exactly why this process is so important and why you absolutely cannot rush it. As the source material warns us, setting this up correctly can take weeks. If you make one mistake, like accidentally giving a guest account access to all the printers, you can create a massive, massive vulnerability.
This super cautious approach leads us directly to the guiding philosophy of all modern cybersecurity.
The mantra is simple, but it's incredibly powerful. Never trust, always verify. This is the heart and soul of a security model we call Zero Trust. Zero Trust basically throws that old idea of a trusted internal network right out the window. It works on one core assumption. Threats can come from anywhere, including from inside the organization. So because of that, every single attempt to access anything at any time has to be verified. No exceptions. This is a huge shift in how we think about security. The old model was kind of like a castle with a moat, The main focus was on protecting the perimeter, and once you got inside, you were generally trusted. Zero Trust is totally different. It's more like a modern bank vault, where you have to re-verify who you are at every single door, for every single transaction. It just never stops checking.
We actually see this in action every day at the ATM. First, it verifies something you have, your physical card. Then it verifies something you know, your PIN. And if you try to make a large withdrawal, it might go one step further and send a code to your phone, another thing you have, just to be extra sure it's you. Every step is another layer of verification.
So what are the big takeaways from all this? It really all comes down to rethinking what access even means for every single device we decide to connect to a network.
So here are the key things to remember. First, the principle of least privilege is king. Only give the absolute minimum access needed to do a job and not an inch more. Second, you have to think about everything. What's plugged in out in the lobby? Does that fancy smart coffee machine really need to be on the main corporate network? And that leads right to the third point. Question every single smart device. Your light bulbs, your coffee maker, even smart toilets can be entry points into your network if they're not secured properly.
Which brings us right back to where we started. The printer, well, it was just an example. The real question I want to leave you with is this. Now that you know what to look for, how many other printers, unsecured devices, overprivileged accounts, forgotten access points, are just waiting to be discovered on your network?